Alrighty, let's do this. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Chat Zion, the city of cities when it comes to YouTube chat shows. Here again with Jason, and today we're going to look at an audience question that has been sent to us on the back of one of our previous shows. We talked a little while ago about addiction and a lot of things, different types of addictions and how to deal with it. We had a question from a viewer about pornography, which is a big issue in today's society, and it's a deep issue, and it's probably one that people tiptoe around a little bit. We're going to do our best to not tiptoe today. So, Jace, how bad is it, and how do we deal with it?
Well, first I want to say how great it is to be back, and I always like coming over and speaking with you. And you know, pornography is one of those things that is very difficult to bring up because most people don't want to talk about sex. Most people don't want to talk about anything to do with sex, and they certainly don't want to put it online. But the reality is, when you're able to talk about something, it has no power over you. And a lot of men and women who are addicted to pornography don't want to talk about it because they're addicted. They don't want to. It creates shame. It creates feelings of inadequacy. And so, if you've ever been addicted, you know, generally when it's brought up, it becomes one of those conversations like, no, or I don't want to be seen talking online about it. And you know, pornography is a problem. It's something that
Definitely.
It takes, not just from a Christian perspective either, but from a worldwide perspective. You know, if you take it back 60 years ago, the introduction of Playboy was a big thing. But you know, Hugh Hefner said that it wasn't the non-Christians that were his major audience, it was the pastors. It was the priests, it was the church people that would walk into the newsagent, grab that pornography magazine, but make sure no one was watching. You know, so even then they knew it was something that was a problem. But see, at the time, people who weren't in church weren't bothered by it. It wasn't a problem for them. Now it's a global epidemic, and you mentioned earlier, you know, that in school, all you have to do is type one thing in online, thing, and you're going to find something that has something to do with pornography. And today, I heard a movie reviewer just say last night actually, and he was movie reviewing Mamma Mia 2, and he said, in this day and age of over-sexualization, it is so good to have a movie that's just family-based. He said it's very hard to see something that you can go to with the family. Your grandparents, your parents, your kids, you can all go and just enjoy. And at the same time, you know, he was also talking about another movie, Equalizer 2, where he said just that violence and, you know, and the fact that so many movies want to have that R rating these days. We want to go violent. Part of that is because of pornography, because we've desensitized our spirits.
Yeah, it's to the point where we're so desensitized that to get that shock value, to get that reaction, that ooh-ah, that people want, they've got to take things to a whole new level. And you see it now, you know, and there's all of these different over-the-top versions of everything. You know, when all of this started off, like you said, you know, it's been 60 years or however long since Playboy first kicked off. You know, if you compared that first ever Playboy issue that went out to the magazine content that you would get now, or to the internet content or DVD content or whatever other digital media that you get now, it would be completely different, and it would be so much more.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, a lot of people would look at PG, and the reality is, as a Christian too, I said this to someone recently, if you put the Bible on screen in the way that it's supposed to be, it would be R-rated the whole time. David getting up on top of his palace and seeing Bathsheba bathing naked from the, you know, you put that on camera, It's an R-rated pornography. That being said, we really need to be open, I think, to talking about where this happens. I mean, in Ephesus with the disciples, Ephesus was where Aphrodite had her temple, the goddess of love. Priestesses would walk around naked. That was their job. And it's been a problem all the way through. In fact, in Ephesus, Paul said, separate the men from the women. And the reason he did that is because of that. You know, you've got out there, the world, the women were the priestesses. They were the ones who had all the power. And they, you know, if you wanted to get your sins absolved, you had to sleep with the priestesses. And so, of course, Paul said, well, separate them. You know, have them separate. Make it less distinguish ourselves. Make it distinct from the world.
Yeah. It's not anymore, and that's becoming a big part of the problem, and why the addiction to it is such a problem now for a lot of people, because it's so easy to get addicted to something that you've got such easy access to. You know, you think about illicit drugs and things like that 50 years ago, 20 years ago even, the access to them was so much harder to get, so much more expensive to get, that there were a lot less people addicted to it. And then as soon as that becomes easier, cheaper, you don't have to leave your house to get access to any of the pornography that's out there now.
Well, that's right. I mean, you know, I had a pornography addiction. I can talk about it because, you know, I asked God to come into my life and heal me of that. But, you know, the fact is it was free. You could find it on your phone. You could find it, you know, in a magazine if you were walking through a retail shop and just have a quick look. These days you can't do that. They put them in a plastic bag for that reason. But online, people have got access to all this stuff. Parental locks only work as far as the child is able to reset the phone. Let's be honest. Most kids know how to do things on their computers their parents will never be able to do.
Yeah.
So keeping kids away from it doesn't really work. There needs to be conversation where you can talk about this. And one of the reasons why I know when this topic came through from a viewer, I wanted to broach it and not make it a side subject is because of the fact that we really don't talk about what it does for our wives or our girlfriends. A lot of people out there are going, you know, well, yeah, today, but, you know, what's the real problem? You're going to get married eventually. And the thing is that when you, especially guys, when we're wired to remember the female anatomy, we are wired to remember. And I know people who have been stuck in addiction. Every time they're with their wives now, they remember not their wife in front of them, but everything else they've seen. And when Jesus said, or when God asked us to be pure, you got to know that God understood who we were. And he didn't want us comparing our future wives or our girlfriends or our current wives, or vice versa, our husbands, future husbands or husbands. He didn't want us comparing the wife that he chose for us, or the husband that he chose for us, with someone else. And that's what we open ourselves up to every single time we access that stuff. Not only that, but if we asked ourselves the question, would we want our mother, our sister, our daughter, our grandmother, or our aunt, would we feel comfortable watching them? And if the answer is no, then as a Christian, why are we comfortable watching someone else's mother, sister, aunt?
It's a big issue, and you know, when you state it like that, you know, would you ever want to see your own family doing that? Your brain responds straight away, going, no, you wouldn't, and it would be completely terrifying for your life. Yeah. To see that. It would tear you up.
Well, you'd hope so, but obviously there are some. I mean, I was reading a story the other day about a mother who was selling her daughter for sex for 2 years, 2 years old. There are some people who are depraved, but as a Christian, you got to ask yourself again, if this is something you really struggle with, one, are you taking it to God? The question that I had for myself was, how was my relationship with God when I was going through this?